Tell you that Ambassador, he's the goodwill ambassador for the Pan-African Parliament in association with the African Union. A very high position in all of the reunification of Africa. The ambassador has led two very large national organizations. The National Wildlife Federation is the largest nonprofit environmental organization in America. He served as chair. 6 million members. He also served as chair of the Apollo Alliance, 19 million members. National, I would call it a sustainable development and renewable energy solutions company. LinkedIn and sent him a note, and it was like we had talked 2 days earlier.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ford. It is an honor to be here in Houston. I live not far away across the border in Lake Charles, Louisiana. So I've made many trips to Houston. And Dr. Ford, I don't know if I've shared with you, and I tell you, a broad smile came over my face because as I sat up front and listened to the eloquent speakers, my granddaughter walked into the room, and she's a student at Texas Southern University. Where's Sarah? Sarah, stand up, stand up. I'm proud of Sarah. And Sarah, meet Sarah before she leaves, and all the members of the Zoetic team that are here. Dr. Ford is correct. He and I have made a connection sometime in Florida. Raul Arundel, where's Raul? Please stand, Raul. He's with the Zoetic team out of Miami. We have our partner and friend Heath Patton from LA, Los Angeles, California, Westlake Village. All right. Doing the right things at the right time. And I know the organization has been around for many years. But I believe that your presence and your footprint and your relationships in Africa has the greatest significance now than it ever has in the history of your organization and even beyond. I shared with people yesterday, and the moderator made 120 to Kenya when I was chairman of the National Wildlife Federation. We were filming for Discovery Channel. We were doing a video on migration of the wildebeest on the Serengeti with the Masai Mara. And I remember my experience in seeing Africa for the first time because, yes, it is and was a sleeping giant, but the giant has awakened. And the giant has offspring all over the globe. And the giant reminded me of an eagle that has flown very high and looks very far. And today, Houston, the eagle has landed. This is an opportunity for us as a diasporan community. It matters not for those that were born in Africa, great, but for those that were not, Africa was born in us. And with that in mind, we as a new generation of people that represent a continent that is 55 nations strong, a continent now that for the first time through the signing of the Continental Free Trade Agreement area, which was signed back in March in Rwanda, and I was fortunate to be the only American present at that signing with the 54 presidents who were present, one was absent. And last week I was in Niger for the signing and additional signings of the Continental Free Trade Agreement where President Buhari of Nigeria signed the Free Trade Agreement. The value of the Free Trade Agreement is incredible. Because no longer will Africa be fragmented. We will no longer look at Africa as one economy or one of 55 economies. For the first time, in the history of the continent. Africa will now extend itself as a single economy. Africa now will have a GDP of about $2.6 trillion that will make it the 6th largest economy in the world. You can take the United States, you can take China, you can take all of Europe and fit it into Africa and still have room to spare. And now we have a free trade agreement that is going to get rid of the fragmentation that has existed since the beginning of Africa. Now Africa will speak as one. Now there will be trade opportunities, one country to another. There will be consistency in regulations, one country to another. They are now considering a common currency. And that's going to take some time, but the European Union did it. Africa will as well. I think what makes Africa even stronger as a continent is the offspring, the diasporans, all of us. All of us who our hearts are in the continent, or on the continent, who want to contribute to the growth of the continent, who want to expand educations and technology opportunities that in the past may not have existed. That is why we formed Zoetic, not just for Africa, but many places in the developing world. But after several trips to Africa, our goals became very apparent because we are a solutions provider, a company that focuses on the greatest needs. We recognize that 1.2 billion people in the world this very minute cannot get a clean glass of water. We recognize that 850 million people in the world don't have access to a light switch. We recognize that the solutions do exist that can meet the greatest needs and the greatest demand of the people that need it the most. And it is incumbent upon us not to go into Africa and take from Africa. Not to go into Africa because Africa is a continent that is not standing waiting with their hands out. There are very brilliant people on the continent. There are strong education institutions on the continent. We need not look very far. What we must do is what Sister Cities International is doing. Make the connection. Each one teach one. And I love the idea of Sister Cities International and your model, because as Avery and I spent lots of time in Africa, we came to the realization that to experience a high level of success, we can't communicate just by email or a trip to Africa once a year. We literally lived in Ghana. We literally lived in Swaziland and Lesotho and South Africa and DRC and Nigeria and Ethiopia. And all throughout the continent, we connected because we began to understand and appreciate the culture of the continent. But then the culture and the people of the continent began to better appreciate us because they came to the realization that we were not there to take from the country. I believe at the end of my lifetime that I would not be judged by what I took. I would be judged by what I gave. And I want to, in my lifetime, at the end of the day, look into the eyes of my sons and my daughters and my grandchildren and be able to say that I made a small contribution, yet small, but collectively, with people like you from Sister Cities International, we were able to help the Eagle Land. We were able to help develop a country with a very strong economy, with an education system to where they no longer need to import new technologies. Those technologies can be developed there, and Africa can become an exporter of technology, an exporter of new ideas, an exporter of solutions that can be experienced not just in the developing world, but in the industrialized nations as well. Africa is well positioned. Africa is now beginning to see new leaderships, young leadership, that are coming in with fresh ideas, with new solutions, with strong ideas, and they know what they want. They know what they need. They mean what they say, and they say what they mean. And that is so critically important as we go forward to deal with the challenges of a growing economy. Africa's growth rate right now is about 3% per year, and in some areas it's even higher. Africa now wants to expand its partnerships beyond China. Africa wants to expand its partnerships. You know, there's one thing that I want to share, that in visiting with a number of the heads of state and having private meetings with many of the presidents and prime ministers, one of the common statements that I heard from one prime minister and leader to another is, we would like to see more people across the table from us that look like us. And that's a good thing. Doesn't necessarily mean that they do not want to deal with non-African or non-African related people. They want to see more of it. And so we have a unique opportunity. Why Africa? Why now? Now is the time. The Continental Free Trade Agreement is establishing a foundation of which we can build. It is going to allow us easier access to trade development, for business development. A young lady was speaking to me yesterday about the idea of setting and expanding tourism in Africa and exposing more people in the United States and in the West to Africa. One thing that I learned after my 76th trip to Africa, what I learned after 76 trips to Africa is that 99% of what I was taught about Africa was not true. It simply was not true. And what I found about Africa, we are part of that vision. And as diasporans, we have an opportunity to be the wind beneath the wings of a growing opportunity, a growing continent. Houston is as diverse as any city in America. Houston is as connected to Africa as I believe most cities in America, and I applaud all the other cities as well, because as I looked at the